The Riverside Steakhouse smelled like grilled meat and broken dreams. I sat at the corner of our reserved table, watching Helena hold court like she owned the place, which, knowing her attorney salary versus my contractor wages, she probably could have. "Trent, you're being awfully quiet tonight," said Mona Black, Helena's best friend and fellow shark at Whitman and Associates. Her smile had all the warmth of a tax audit. I took a sip of my beer, the only thing on this menu under $20, and shrugged. Just enjoying the show. Helena shot me a look that could have frozen the Mississippi. She was in her element here, surrounded by her law firm colleagues, her parents who still acted like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe, and Rex Maloney. Good old Rex, her high school sweetheart who'd made it big selling cars and never let anyone forget it. "What show?" Rex asked, flashing those veneers that probably cost more than my truck. He'd positioned himself right next to Helena, close enough that their shoulders touched when he leaned in to whisper something that made her laugh. "The one where everyone pretends this is normal," I said. Sophie, our 15-year-old daughter, looked up from her phone long enough to roll her eyes. "Dad, can you not be weird for like 5 minutes?" "Weird is my specialty, kiddo." Helena's father, Judge William Crane, cleared his throat. Even retired, he still had that courtroom presence that made people sit up straight. "Perhaps we should order. I'm sure everyone's hungry." The waiter appeared like magic. Funny how fast service gets when you're dining with people who tip in hundreds instead of singles. Helena ordered for the table without asking anyone what they wanted. Prime rib for her parents, salmon for Mona, the porterhouse for Rex, and the cheapest steak for me. "I can order for myself," I said. "I know what you like," Helena replied, not looking at me. That was rich. After 16 years of marriage, Helena knew exactly 2 things about what I liked: beer and being left alone. Everything else she'd decided for me, from the house we lived in to the friends we kept to the restaurants we visited. The conversation flowed around me like water around a rock. Helena's recent courtroom victory over some poor sap who couldn't afford her hourly rate. Rex's latest dealership expansion. Mona's promotion to senior partner. Sophie's honor roll achievement that I'd apparently forgotten to congratulate her for. I hadn't forgotten. I'd been working a double shift to pay for her SAT prep classes. "You know what I love about this family?" Rex said, raising his wine glass. The guy was already 3 sheets to the wind, and dinner hadn't even arrived. Helena's always been a fighter. Even in high school, she knew exactly what she wanted and how to get it. "Some things never change," I muttered. Helena heard me. She always heard me when I said something she could use against me later. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just agreeing with Rex." But Helena's eyes had that gleam they got right before she went in for the elimination. In court, they called it her closing argument face. At home, I called it the reason I spent so much time in my workshop. "Actually, I'm glad Rex brought that up," Helena said, setting down her wine glass with the precision of a surgeon. "Because there's something I've been meaning to discuss." The table went quiet. Even Sophie looked up from her phone, sensing the shift in atmosphere like animals before an earthquake. "Helena," her mother warned softly, "perhaps this isn't the time." "No, Mother, this is exactly the time." Helena's voice carried that courtroom authority that had intimidated judges and juries across 3 counties. "I'm tired of walking on eggshells around certain people's feelings." I knew where this was going. Had known for weeks, actually, ever since I'd started paying attention to things I'd been too trusting or too stupid to notice before. The late-night phone calls, the appointments that didn't match our shared calendar, the insurance notifications that came to our joint account but never got mentioned over dinner. "Helena, don't," Rex said, but his voice lacked conviction. If anything, he looked excited, like a kid about to watch a car crash. "Don't what? Tell the truth?" Helena's laugh had sharp edges. "I'm 43 years old. I've built a career, raised a daughter, and maintained this family practically single-handedly. I think I've earned the right to speak honestly about my life." Sophie's face had gone pale. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Helena reached across the table and squeezed Sophie's hand. "Sweetheart, you know how much I love you, right? How much we both love you." The emphasis on both hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest, but I kept my expression neutral, my hand steady on my beer bottle. Years of construction work had taught me how to stay calm when everything was falling apart around me. "Helena," Judge Crane said sharply, "I strongly advise you to reconsider this course of action." "With all due respect, Daddy, I'm not in your courtroom anymore." Helena turned to face me directly, her green eyes bright with something that might have been triumph. "Trent, I want everyone here to understand something. What happened with Sophie, her conception, it wasn't your fault." The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. I could feel everyone at the table holding their breath, waiting for my reaction, waiting for me to explode, to shout, to make a scene that would prove whatever point Helena was trying to make. Instead, I took another sip of my beer and waited. Helena's confidence faltered slightly when I didn't react. She'd been expecting anger, maybe violence, something she could use to paint herself as the victim. When I stayed silent, she doubled down. "What I'm saying is, it's not my fault that you couldn't have children, that we had to find alternative solutions." "Alternative solutions," I repeated slowly. "Rex helped us," Helena said, and there it was, the bomb she'd been building toward all evening. "He helped us when we needed it most, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that Sophie exists, and I won't apologize for doing what was necessary to make that happen." Sophie's face went white. "Mom, what are you saying?" Rex shifted uncomfortably in his seat, suddenly very interested in his wine glass. Mona had gone statue still, her lawyer instincts probably screaming at her to shut this down before it got worse. But Helena was in full courtroom mode now, and nothing could stop her when she got like this. "I'm saying that when your father couldn't give me what I needed," Rex stepped up, "like he always has, like he always will." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the kitchen staff clattering dishes, other diners laughing at their tables, the soft jazz playing over the restaurant's sound system, normal sounds from a normal world that felt suddenly very far away. "Well," I said finally, setting my beer bottle down with deliberate care, "that's quite a speech." Helena's chin lifted defiantly. "It's the truth." "Is it?" I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. Not dramatically, not with any flourish, just calmly, like I was checking my phone or looking for a tip for the waiter. Helena's eyes locked onto the envelope like it was a loaded weapon. "What is that?" "Correspondence from the Riverside Fertility Clinic," I said conversationally. "Funny thing about shared insurance accounts. They send notifications for all appointments and procedures, even the ones your spouse doesn't know about." The color drained from Helena's face. Rex started to stand up, but I held up my free hand. "Sit down, Rex. We're just getting to the good part." I opened the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "This is a request I submitted 3 weeks ago for copies of all consent forms and documentation related to fertility treatments under our policy. Amazing how cooperative medical administrators get when you mention potential insurance fraud." "Trent," Helena said, her voice suddenly small, "you don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly." I unfolded the paper and held it up so everyone could see the clinic's letterhead. "See, the funny thing about consent forms is that they're very specific about who's consenting to what. And this one here, dated 18 months ago, clearly states that Helena Ardell requested artificial insemination using donor sperm from one Brett Maloney, with explicit instructions to exclude her husband from the process." Sophie made a sound like she'd been punched in the stomach. Judge Crane's face had turned the color of old brick. Mona was frantically typing something on her phone, probably texting her firm's crisis management team. "But here's the really interesting part," I continued, pulling out a second document. This is the consent form Helena signed, acknowledging that she was deliberately deceiving her spouse about the paternity of the resulting child. There's even a clause here about the legal implications of such deception in the state of Missouri. Helena tried to grab the papers, but I pulled them back smoothly. The clinic kept very detailed records, Helena, including recordings of your consultation sessions where you explicitly stated that you intended to pass the child off as mine. That's not… I never said… You did say it, and it's all documented. I folded the papers and slipped them back into the envelope. The clinic was very thorough. They even have records of the payments Rex made for the procedures. Rex had gone green around the gills. Now wait just a minute. No, Rex, you wait. I stood up slowly, my 6'2" frame casting a shadow across the table. You want to play daddy? Congratulations. You get to explain to your wife why you've been paying for fertility treatments behind her back. You get to explain to your business partners why you've been using company funds for personal expenses. And you get to explain to the IRS why none of this was reported as income or gifts. The restaurant seemed to have gotten quieter around us, or maybe that was just my imagination. I could see other diners glancing our way, sensing drama, but not understanding what they were witnessing. I also took the liberty of having some dirt work done, I said, pulling out a third document. Turns out my sperm count is just fine, always has been. So either we're looking at a medical miracle or someone's been lying about more than just consent forms. Helena's hands were shaking now. Trent, please. We can discuss this at home, privately. Privately? I laughed, and the sound came out harder than I'd intended. Like how you privately decided to have another man's child. Like how you privately let me believe I was Sophie's father for 15 years. Like how you privately planned this whole evening to humiliate me in front of everyone who matters to you. I reached into my pocket again and pulled out my phone. See, the thing about living in the digital age is that everything leaves a trail. Text messages, email records, appointment confirmations. Your phone automatically backs up to our shared cloud account, Helena. It has been for years. Her face went ashen. You went through my phone? I went through our shared account, the one you set up, the one you insisted on for transparency in our marriage. I scrolled through the screen, reading highlights. Let's see. Can't wait to see Trent's face when he finds out. That's from you to Rex, dated 3 days ago. He deserves this for being such a pathetic loser. Also, you to Rex. Sophie will be so much better off knowing her real father. That one's particularly nice. Sophie was crying now, quiet tears streaming down her face. Part of me wanted to comfort her, but a larger part of me was tired of being the only one in this family who cared about anyone else's feelings. And my personal favorite, I continued, is this exchange from last week. Rex asks, "What if he doesn't react the way we want?" And you respond, "Then we'll make him react. I know exactly which buttons to push." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the kitchen sounds seemed to have stopped. Helena sat frozen in her chair, her perfect composure finally cracking. Rex looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Mona had stopped typing and was staring at me like I'd just performed a magic trick. "So here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice calm and steady. "I'm going to walk out of here. I'm going to drive to my lawyer's office, where I have an appointment in exactly 1 hour. I'm going to file for divorce, citing adultery and fraud. I'm going to request a paternity test for Sophie, and I'm going to make sure that every single document from tonight becomes part of the public record." Helena found her voice. "You can't do this. Sophie is your daughter, regardless of biology. You've raised her, you've loved her. Have I?" I looked at Sophie, who was still crying silently. "Sophie, sweetheart, I need you to answer something honestly. Do you love me? Do you respect me? Or have you spent the last 15 years wishing you had a different father?" Sophie's answer was written all over her face. The shame, the embarrassment, the relief that she might finally get to trade up for a father with money and status. It hurt worse than anything Helena had said. That's what I thought. I picked up the envelope and walked around the table. Helena, you wanted everyone here to know the truth about our family? Congratulations. Mission accomplished. I stopped next to her chair and leaned down, speaking quietly enough that only she could hear. You know what the really sad part is? If you'd just asked for a divorce 5 years ago, I would have given it to you. If you'd been honest about wanting Rex instead of me, I would have stepped aside. But you couldn't do that, could you? You had to make it a game. You had to make me the villain. I straightened up and addressed the table one final time. Enjoy your dinner, everyone. Helena's paying. I walked toward the exit, my boots clicking on the hardwood floor. Behind me, I could hear Helena trying to salvage the situation, her voice rising as she called after me. Rex was saying something about misunderstandings and jumping to conclusions. Mona was probably already calculating the damage to Helena's career. But I didn't look back. I'd spent 16 years looking back, making excuses, trying to fix things that were broken from the start. Tonight, I was finally moving forward. The hostess smiled at me as I passed her station. Have a good evening, sir. I intend to, I said. And for the first time in years, I meant it. The apartment I rented was about what you'd expect for a guy who'd just walked out on his life with nothing but a pickup truck and a toolbox. Furnished studio above Murphy's Bar on the south side, where the rent was cheap and the neighbors minded their own business. The bed creaked, the shower barely worked, and the walls were thin enough that I could hear every argument, every late-night TV show, every crying baby in the building. It was perfect. I'd been there 3 days when Vic Dorsey showed up with coffee and donuts from the place down the street. Vic ran the Pit, a boxing gym that had seen better decades, but still turned out fighters who could take a punch and give one back. He'd been my trainer back when I thought I might make something of myself in the ring, before Helena convinced me that fighting was beneath a man with my potential. You look like hell, Vic said, settling his bulk into the apartment's only chair. Thanks. You always know just what to say. Vic was pushing 70, with hands like concrete blocks and a face that had stopped more punches than a heavy bag. He'd been trying to get me back in the gym for years, said I still had some fight left in me. I'd always been too busy playing house with Helena to listen. Heard about the dinner, he said. News travels fast. Mona Black's assistant goes to my gym. Kid heard the whole story from her boss. Vic bit into a chocolate donut, getting powdered sugar in his gray beard. Sounds like you handled it smart. Did I? Because it doesn't feel smart. Feels like I just blew up my life for the satisfaction of watching Helena squirm for 30 seconds. Sometimes that's enough. Vic studied me with those sharp blue eyes that had seen everything the city could throw at a man. Question is, what are you going to do now? That was the problem. For 16 years, my life had been built around Helena's schedule, Helena's career, Helena's plans. I got up when she needed me to, worked the jobs that fit her timeline, socialized with people she approved of. Now that I was free of all that, I had no idea what I actually wanted. I've got some work lined up, I said. Johnson's having me redo his kitchen, and there's a bathroom renovation on Maple Street. That's not what I meant. I knew what he meant. The question wasn't how I was going to pay rent. The question was whether I was going to let Helena and Rex walk away from this without consequences. Whether I was going to be the bigger man and move on with my life, or whether I was going to make them pay for what they'd done. They're going to spin this, you know, Vic said. Helena's probably already telling people you abandoned your family, that you couldn't handle the truth about Sophie's paternity, that you're the villain in this story. He was right. I'd already seen the first wave of it on social media. Sophie had posted something on Instagram about her psycho dad who can't handle reality. Helena's friends were sharing articles about men who abandoned their families during difficult times. Even my own co-workers were starting to treat me like I'd done something wrong. Let them, I said. I know the truth. Truth doesn't matter if nobody believes it. Vic finished his donut and leaned forward. You want some advice from an old man who's seen a lot of fights? Do I have a choice? The worst thing you can do right now is nothing. You walk away, keep your head down, try to rebuild quietly. They'll destroy you. Helena's a lawyer. Rex has money and connections, and they've got a 15-year-old girl who's going to tell everyone who'll listen that her daddy abandoned her. I'd been thinking the same thing, but hearing it out loud made it worse. So what do you suggest? You fight back, but you fight smart. Vic's smile had sharp edges. You don't get mad, you get even. And you make sure that when it's over, everyone knows exactly who the real villains are. My phone buzzed with a text message. Helena, of course. The 10th one since I'd walked out of the restaurant. We need to talk. This doesn't have to get ugly. I showed Vic the message. He laughed, a sound like gravel in a cement mixer. Too late for that, he said. It got ugly the moment she decided to humiliate you in public. Now the only question is whether you're going to let her control the narrative. That afternoon, I drove past my old house. Helena's car was in the driveway, along with Rex's flashy BMW and Mona's Mercedes. A strategy session, no doubt. Damage control. They were probably sitting around my kitchen table drinking my coffee, figuring out how to minimize the fallout from their little dinner theater performance. I parked across the street and watched for a while. Through the living room window, I could see them talking animatedly. Helena was pacing, which meant she was in full crisis mode. Rex kept running his hands through his hair, which meant he was realizing that his grand gesture might have consequences he hadn't considered. Mona was taking notes, which meant she was already working on the legal angles. My phone rang. Sophie. Dad? Where are you? Around, I said. How are you holding up? I'm confused. Her voice was small, younger than her 15 years. Mom says you're being dramatic, that you're trying to punish her for something that happened before I was born. Is that what she says? She says you knew, that you've always known, and you're just using it as an excuse to leave us. I closed my eyes and leaned back against the truck's headrest. Of course Helena would try to rewrite history, make it seem like I'd been in on the deception all along, like I was the one betraying the family by refusing to play along anymore. Sophie, I want you to listen to me very carefully. I never knew. Not until 3 weeks ago, when I started noticing things that didn't add up. Your mother lied to me for 15 years, and she planned that dinner specifically to hurt me. The text messages prove it. She says you hacked her phone. I accessed our shared cloud account, the one she set up. Everything I found was already being backed up to our family account. Sophie was quiet for a long moment. So it's true? Rex is really my biological father? According to the clinic records, yes. And you're just going to abandon me because of that? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. Sophie, I'm not abandoning you. You're my daughter, biology or no biology. I raised you, I love you, and that's never going to change. Then why did you leave? How do you explain to a 15-year-old that sometimes love isn't enough? That sometimes the people you care about most are the ones who hurt you worst? That sometimes walking away is the only way to save whatever dignity you have left? Because I can't live with people who think so little of me that they'd plan something like that dinner. Because I can't pretend that everything's fine when it's not. And because you deserve better than a family built on lies. I want you to come home, Sophie said, and for a moment she sounded like the little girl who used to climb into my lap when she had nightmares. I can't do that, sweetheart. Not right now. Because of Mom? Because of a lot of things. After I hung up, I sat in the truck for another hour, watching my former life play out through those living room windows. At one point, Helena came to the window and looked out. She saw my truck immediately, and for a moment our eyes met across the distance. Even from 50 yards away, I could see the mixture of anger and fear on her face. She pulled out her phone and made a call. 5 minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up behind my truck. The officer was young, probably new to the force. He approached my window with the careful courtesy of someone who didn't want to escalate a situation he didn't fully understand. "Good afternoon, sir. I'm Officer Martinez. I received a call about someone suspicious parked in this neighborhood." "I'm watching my house," I said. "Or my former house, anyway. Can I see some identification?" I handed over my license, which still showed my old address. Officer Martinez studied it, then looked at the house, then back at me. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to move along. The homeowner has requested that you not loiter in the area." "The homeowner," I repeated. "You mean my wife? The woman I've been married to for 16 years? "Sir, I understand this is a difficult situation, but—" "It's fine, officer." I started the truck. I was just leaving anyway. But as I drove away, I felt something shift inside me, something cold and hard and focused. Helena wanted to play games. She wanted to use the police to intimidate me, make me feel like a criminal for sitting on a public street. Fine. We'd play games. That evening, I went back to the pit. The gym was busy with the after-work crowd, guys who spent their days in offices or warehouses and came here to remember what it felt like to be dangerous. The air was thick with sweat and leather and the sound of gloves hitting heavy bags. Vic was in his office, a cramped space behind the main gym that served as his command center. The room felt even smaller once the door shut behind me, the hum of the gym muffled into a distant throb. The walls were crowded with photos of fighters he'd trained, fists raised, faces bruised and proud, alongside yellowed newspaper clippings from matches that mattered to nobody but the guys who'd won them. The air smelled like old paper, sweat, and cheap coffee that had been sitting on a warmer too long. "How'd it go?" he asked, not looking up at first, pen moving steadily across a legal pad. "She called the cops on me for sitting outside my own house." Vic finally looked up then, his expression calm, unsurprised. He nodded like he'd expected as much, like this was just another box checked on a list he'd already written. "She's scared. Good. Scared people make mistakes." I shifted my weight, the word scared echoing in my head. "What kind of mistakes?" "The kind that give you leverage." Vic reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder, thick enough that it made a solid sound when he set it down. I made some calls, asked around about Rex's business practices. I opened the folder and found photocopies of newspaper articles, business records, and what looked like court documents, corners bent and margins marked with pen. My pulse picked up as I scanned the pages. "Where did you get all this?" "I know people." Vic leaned back in his chair, watching me read. "Rex Maloney's been cutting corners for years, selling cars with rolled-back odometers, financing deals that border on predatory lending, insurance scams. Nothing big enough to shut him down, but enough to make life interesting if the right people started asking the right questions." I flipped through the documents slowly, absorbing the dates, the names, the familiar addresses. It wasn't a single bombshell, just a steady accumulation of dirt. It was a pattern of small-time corruption, the kind of thing that successful businessmen got away with because nobody cared enough to investigate. But it was all there, documented and dated, waiting for someone to care. "And Helena?" "Clean, mostly." Vic shrugged one shoulder. "But her firm's been handling some of Rex's legal work. Probably didn't know about the shady stuff, but if it comes out that she was personally involved with a client while representing him..." He let the sentence trail off and shrugged again. "Bar Association takes a dim view of that kind of thing." I closed the folder and set it on Vic's desk, the weight of it feeling heavier now. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything." His tone was mild, almost innocent. "I'm just saying that information is power, and right now they think they have all the power. Might be time to even the odds." As if on cue, my phone buzzed in my hand. The vibration felt sharper this time. Another text from Helena. This one was different from the others, stripped of venom and replaced with something colder. I'm filing a restraining order tomorrow. Stay away from the house and Sophie. I showed the message to Vic. His jaw tightened, his eyes darkening as he read. She's escalating, he said. Trying to make you look like the aggressor. Can she do that? Get a restraining order? The question came out flatter than I felt. If she claims she feels threatened, yeah. Judges err on the side of caution in domestic situations. Vic studied my face like he was gauging how close I was to losing control. Question is, what are you going to do about it? I thought about Sophie's voice on the phone, small and confused, asking when I was coming home. I thought about Helena's smug expression at dinner, the way she'd delivered her bombshell like she was reading a verdict. I thought about Rex's satisfied smile, the look of a man who thought he'd won something. I'm going to fight back, I said, but I'm going to be smart about it. Vic's smile was predatory. Now you're talking. What do you need? Information, evidence, and a plan that doesn't land me in jail. I can help with all of that. Vic leaned back in his chair. But first, you need to understand something. Once you start down this road, there's no going back. You sure you want to do this? I thought about the last 16 years of my life, the compromises, the small humiliations, the gradual erosion of everything I'd once been. The way Helena looked at me like I was something she'd settled for, the way Sophie had inherited that same look. Yeah, I said. I'm sure. Outside, it had started to rain, the kind of cold, steady drizzle that made everything look gray and washed out. But for the first time since that dinner, I felt like I had a purpose. Helena wanted a war. She was about to get one. The restraining order came through on a Tuesday. I was at Johnson's house installing cabinet hardware in his kitchen when the sheriff's deputy found me. Professional courtesy, he said. Most guys in my situation got served at their workplace, in front of their co-workers. Deputy Chen was doing me a favor by tracking me down at a job site. Sorry about this, Trent, he said, handing me the papers. Just doing my job. I know, Danny. Thanks for keeping it quiet. Danny Chen had been 2 years behind me in high school, back when I thought my biggest problem was whether I'd get a football scholarship. Now he was serving me legal papers, while I installed cabinet pulls for $40 an hour. The restraining order was comprehensive. I couldn't go within 500 feet of my former house, couldn't contact Helena directly, couldn't attend any of Sophie's school events. Helena had painted a picture of an unstable man who'd become increasingly threatening since their separation. She'd included screenshots of text messages I'd sent, carefully edited to remove context and make them sound sinister. The message where I'd said, "You'll regret this," was there, but not the part where she'd threatened to keep Sophie from seeing me. The one where I'd said, "I know where you live," was included, but not the context that I was talking about picking up my tools from the garage. It was masterful, really. Helena had turned my hurt and anger into evidence of dangerous instability. She'd made me the villain in our story, and she'd done it with legal precision. I called Vic from the parking lot of a gas station on Route 9. They got the restraining order, I said. Expected as much. What's the scope? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I read him the relevant sections. Vic listened without comment, occasionally grunting acknowledgement. She's good, he said finally, making you look like the aggressor while positioning herself as the victim. Classic lawyer move. So what do I do? You adapt. She wants to play legal games? We play better legal games. That afternoon, I met with my own attorney, James Crawford. Crawford was nothing like the silk-suited sharks at Helena's firm. He worked out of a converted house near the courthouse, handled divorces and DUIs and the occasional personal injury case. His office smelled like coffee and old paper, and his secretary was his wife of 30 years. This is a problem, Crawford said, reading through the restraining order. She's building a case that you're unstable, potentially dangerous. If this goes to a custody hearing, it's going to hurt. What about the evidence I have? The clinic records? The text messages? That proves she lied about Sophie's paternity. Doesn't prove you're not a threat. Crawford leaned back in his chair, which creaked ominously. We need to show that you're the stable one, that she's the one acting irrationally. How do we do that? Carefully and legally. Crawford's expression was serious. Trent, I need you to understand something. Whatever you're thinking about doing, whatever your friend Vic might be suggesting, don't. The moment you step outside the law, you lose everything. Helena's waiting for you to make a mistake. I left Crawford's office with a list of things I needed to do. Document everything. Keep records of all communication attempts. Follow the restraining order to the letter. Be the model of reasonable behavior while Helena's team tried to paint me as a dangerous stalker. It was good advice, smart advice, legal advice. I ignored it completely. That night, I sat in my studio apartment with Vic and a guy named Tommy Reeves. Tommy was one of Vic's fighters, a lightweight with quick hands and a quicker mind. More importantly, Tommy had grown up in the digital age and knew things about computers that Vic and I couldn't even pronounce. So what exactly are we looking for? Tommy asked, setting up his laptop on my kitchen table. Anything that shows they planned this, I said. Anything that proves Helena and Rex conspired to humiliate me at that dinner. You already have the text messages, Vic pointed out. I have some of them. But Helena's not stupid. She wouldn't put everything in writing. I pulled out the folder Vic had given me earlier. What about Rex's business records? His financial dealings? Tommy's fingers flew over the keyboard. Rex Maloney, right? Maloney Motors? That's him. Okay, let's see what Uncle Google knows about your friend Rex. What Uncle Google knew was quite a lot. Tommy pulled up news articles, business filings, court records, social media posts. Rex had been busy over the years, building his car empire through a combination of aggressive marketing and questionable business practices. Look at this, Tommy said, pointing to a Better Business Bureau complaint from 6 months ago. Customer says Rex sold him a car with a rolled-back odometer. Claims Rex personally assured him the mileage was accurate. Can we prove that? Maybe, if the customer kept records, if there's documentation. Tommy kept typing. Here's another one. Woman claims Rex's finance manager pressured her into a loan she couldn't afford. Says when she tried to return the car, Rex threatened to sue her. The complaints kept coming. Rolled-back odometers, predatory lending, cars sold with undisclosed damage, service work that wasn't performed but was charged for anyway. A pattern of small-scale fraud that had been going on for years. This is good, Vic said. But it's not enough. We need something that connects to Helena. Tommy pulled up Helena's law firm website. Whitman and Associates. Looks like they handle a lot of business law, some criminal defense. He clicked through the attorney profiles. Helena specializes in family law and business litigation. Check if Rex is listed as a client, I said. Tommy typed for a few minutes, pulling up court filings and legal documents. Here we go. Maloney Motors vs. Central Bank, filed 18 months ago, attorney of record, Helena Ardell. The pieces started clicking together. Helena had been representing Rex in business litigation while carrying his child. She'd been taking his money professionally while taking his sperm personally. That's a conflict of interest, Vic said. More than that, Tommy added, still typing. Look at this. The case was settled out of court 3 months ago. Rex's company paid a $200,000 fine for fraudulent business practices. I stared at the screen. Helena helped him settle a fraud case? Looks like it. And according to this, the settlement included an agreement that Rex would reform his business practices. No more rolled-back odometers, no more predatory lending. Tommy scrolled down. But look at these Better Business Bureau complaints. They're all dated after the settlement. So he's violating the agreement? Looks that way. And if his attorney knew about it... Tommy shrugged. That's a problem for both of them. We spent the next 2 hours digging deeper. Tommy had a gift for finding connections. for following digital breadcrumbs that led to bigger discoveries. By the time we were done, we had a picture of Rex Maloney as a serial fraudster who'd been using Helena's legal services to stay one step ahead of the law. "So what do we do with this?" I asked. Vic's smile was predatory. "We use it, carefully." The next morning, I started my campaign. Nothing illegal, nothing that would violate the restraining order. Just a concerned citizen sharing information with the appropriate authorities. I sent copies of Rex's recent Better Business Bureau complaints to the State Attorney General's office, along with copies of his settlement agreement showing that he was supposed to have reformed his practices. I sent information about Helena's representation of Rex to the Missouri Bar Association, with a detailed timeline showing that she'd been personally involved with him while representing his business interests. I sent copies of everything to the local newspaper's investigative reporter, a woman named Sarah Kim, who'd made her reputation exposing corruption in local government. And then, I waited. The first domino fell 3 days later. Sarah Kim's article appeared in the Thursday edition of the Herald, with the headline, "Local Car Dealer Accused of Violating Fraud Settlement." It was a straightforward piece of journalism, laying out the complaints against Rex and noting that he'd previously been sanctioned for similar practices. The article mentioned that Rex's attorney in the previous case had been Helena Ardell of Whitman and Associates, but it didn't go into detail about their personal relationship. That would come later. Rex's response was immediate and predictable. He called the Herald's editor, threatening to sue for defamation. He posted angry messages on social media claiming he was the victim of a vindictive ex-employee. He even showed up at the newspaper's office demanding a retraction, all of which just made him look guilty. The second domino fell on Monday when the State Attorney General's office announced they were opening an investigation into Maloney Motors. The press release was dry and bureaucratic, but the message was clear. Rex was in trouble. Helena's response was more measured. She issued a statement through her firm, saying that she'd represented Mr. Maloney in a previous matter, but was no longer involved in his legal affairs. She declined to comment on the ongoing investigation. But I could see the cracks forming. Helena's partners at Whitman and Associates were probably asking uncomfortable questions about her relationship with Rex. The Bar Association would be looking into potential conflicts of interest. And Rex was learning that having money and connections didn't make you bulletproof when the State Attorney General decided to take an interest in your business. My phone rang while I was installing a bathroom vanity at Mrs. Patterson's house on Elm Street. Sophie. "Dad, what did you do?" "I'm installing a vanity. Your grandmother would be proud of my attention to detail." "You know what I mean. Rex is all over the news. Mom's freaking out." "I didn't do anything illegal, Sophie. I just made sure the right people had access to public information." "Mom says you're trying to destroy her career." "Your mother destroyed her own career when she decided to have an affair with a client." The words came out harsher than I'd intended. Sophie was still just a kid, caught in the middle of something she didn't understand. "She says you're being vindictive, that you're trying to hurt her because you can't handle the truth about me." I set down my screwdriver and took a deep breath. "Sophie, the truth about you is that you're smart, funny, talented, and kind. You're also stubborn, dramatic, and too quick to believe what people tell you instead of figuring things out for yourself. None of that has anything to do with your DNA." "Then why are you doing this?" "Because actions have consequences. Your mother and Rex thought they could humiliate me in public and then use the legal system to silence me. They thought wrong." Sophie was quiet for a moment. "Are you going to keep going? Making things worse?" "I'm going to keep fighting for myself. For the first time in 16 years, I'm going to stand up and refuse to be treated like garbage by people who are supposed to care about me. Even if it hurts me?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Sophie was asking me to choose between my own dignity and her comfort. To go back to being the quiet, accommodating man who absorbed everyone else's problems so they didn't have to deal with consequences. Sophie, I love you, but I can't sacrifice my entire life to protect you from your mother's choices. She created this situation, not me. After I hung up, I sat in Mrs. Patterson's half-finished bathroom and thought about the man I'd been 3 weeks ago. That man would have backed down, would have let Helena and Rex win, would have quietly disappeared from their lives to avoid making things difficult. But that man was gone. In his place was someone harder, someone who understood that sometimes the only way to win was to be willing to lose everything. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, the vibration sharp and insistent against my thigh as I stood alone in the kitchen. The room smelled faintly of stale coffee and cleaning spray, the kind of quiet, ordinary space that usually kept my thoughts grounded. I wiped my hands on a dish towel before picking up the phone, already bracing myself, already expecting something ugly even before the screen lit up. Stop now, or things get worse for everyone. The words sat there, blunt and unadorned, no signature, no explanation. I read it twice, then a third time, letting the meaning settle instead of rushing past it. There was a time when my chest would have tightened, when I would have started running through worst-case scenarios, imagining shadows at every corner and danger in every unfamiliar sound. Instead, I felt a slow, steady heat build behind my ribs. I showed the message to Vic when I met him at the gym that evening. The pit was loud and alive, heavy bags thudding, jump ropes slapping the concrete, the air thick with sweat and iron. Vic leaned against the ring apron as I held out my phone, his eyes scanning the screen without much change in expression. "Rex?" he asked. "Probably. Or one of his friends." Vic snorted softly, a sound halfway between amusement and contempt, and handed the phone back. He studied my face instead like he was looking for cracks. "You worried?" I thought about it. A month ago, a threatening text would have terrified me. I would have seen it as proof that I was in over my head, that I needed to back down before someone got hurt. I would have replayed it over and over, hearing menace in every word, convincing myself that fear was the same thing as caution. Now it just made me angry. The anger wasn't wild or explosive. It was controlled, focused, the kind that sharpened your vision instead of clouding it. It reminded me why I was here, why I kept showing up, why quitting wasn't an option anymore. "No," I said. "I'm not worried. I'm motivated." Vic's grin was fierce. It stretched slow and deliberate across his face, the look of a man who liked what he heard and trusted it. "Good, because Phase 2 starts tomorrow." The charity boxing match was Vic's idea, and it was brilliant in its simplicity. He laid it out one night after closing, the gym mostly empty, the lights dimmed except for the ring. He talked while wrapping his hands, casual, like he was discussing the weather instead of a calculated provocation. Every year, the Riverside Athletic Commission held a fundraiser for the local youth center. Local businessmen, retired athletes, and gym rats would climb into the ring for 3-round exhibition matches. It was all very civilized, very community-minded, and very public. Families filled the bleachers, cameras flashed, and the local paper always ran smiling photos the next morning. Rex had participated twice before, back when he was trying to build his image as a pillar of the community. He'd fought carefully selected opponents, older guys, smaller guys, guys who understood that the real purpose was to make Rex look good while raising money for charity. No one pushed him too hard. No one embarrassed him. It was theater, not a fight. "He won't be able to resist," Vic said, reviewing the participant list from previous years. He tapped the page with a finger, leaving a smudge of chalk behind. "Guy like Rex, he thinks he's tough because he's got money. You challenge him publicly, question his courage, he'll have to respond." I leaned back against the lockers, listening, imagining Rex's face when he saw his name in print next to mine. The idea settled in my gut, heavy but right. "And if he doesn't?" Vic looked up, eyes sharp, already a step ahead. Then he looks like a coward in front of the whole town. Either way, you win. The challenge came in the form of a letter to the editor of the Herald, published on a Wednesday morning under my full name. Seeing it in print felt surreal, my words boxed in by newsprint, impossible to take back. Vic insisted on every line being clean, measured, impossible to dismiss as ranting or bravado. To the editor, I've been reading about the upcoming charity boxing event, and I noticed that Brett Rex Maloney has participated in previous years. As someone who's been training at the pit for most of my adult life, I'd like to challenge Mr. Maloney to a match this year. I understand that Mr. Maloney has been going through some legal difficulties lately, and I thought this might be a good opportunity for him to show the community that he's still the stand-up guy he claims to be. Boxing is about honesty, courage, and facing your opponent directly. No lawyers, no intermediaries, just two men settling their differences with skill and determination. All proceeds go to the youth center, so it's for a good cause. I hope Mr. Maloney will accept. Sincerely, Trent Ardell. The letter was a masterpiece of public manipulation. I'd questioned Rex's courage without directly insulting him. I'd connected the challenge to his legal problems without making specific accusations. And I'd framed the whole thing as charity work, making it almost impossible for him to refuse without looking petty. Rex's response came 2 days later, also in the Herald. To the editor, I'm happy to accept Mr. Ardell's challenge for the upcoming charity boxing event. I've always believed in supporting our local youth center, and I'm glad Mr. Ardell is finally taking an interest in community service. I look forward to a good, clean fight for a worthy cause. Brett Maloney. The response was shorter than mine, but the message was clear. Rex thought he was going to teach me a lesson in front of the whole town. He probably figured that humiliating me in the ring would be the perfect capstone to his conquest of my family. He had no idea what was coming. I spent the next 3 weeks training like I was preparing for the Olympics. 2 hours in the gym every morning, road work every evening, sparring sessions with guys half my age who hit like freight trains. Vic worked me harder than he had when I was 25, pushing me past exhaustion and then pushing me some more. Rex has got reach on you, Vic said, watching me work the heavy bag. He's taller, longer arms, but he's soft. Guy hasn't been in a real fight since high school, and even then, he probably picked on smaller kids. What about technique? He's got some. Enough to look good against the usual charity match opponents. But charity matches aren't real fights. No one's trying to hurt anyone. Everyone's pulling their punches. Vic's smile was predatory. This won't be a charity match. The weeks of training served another purpose. While I was getting in the best shape of my life, Rex was dealing with the fallout from the Attorney General's investigation. The state had frozen some of his business accounts pending the outcome of their inquiry. 3 more customers had come forward with complaints about fraudulent practices. His insurance company was threatening to drop his coverage, and Helena was facing her own problems. The Bar Association had opened a formal inquiry into her relationship with Rex while she was representing him. It wasn't enough to get her disbarred, but it was enough to make her partners at Whitman and Associates very nervous about the firm's reputation. I followed all of this from a distance, through newspaper articles and courthouse gossip, and the occasional update from Tommy's internet research. I was careful not to violate the restraining order, but I didn't need to get close to Helena to see that her carefully constructed world was falling apart. The night before the fight, I sat in my studio apartment and thought about what I was really trying to accomplish. The boxing match was just theater, a public humiliation designed to strip away Rex's image as a successful alpha male. But what came after that? My phone rang. Sophie. Dad, I need to ask you something. Shoot. Are you really going to fight Rex tomorrow night? That's the plan. Why? What's the point? I thought about how to answer that. How do you explain to a 15-year-old that sometimes a man reaches a point where he has to stand up and fight, not because he'll win, but because losing while standing is better than winning while kneeling? Because he needs to understand that actions have consequences, I said finally. Because he thinks he can take whatever he wants from whoever he wants, and someone needs to show him he's wrong. What if you get hurt? Then I get hurt, but I'll get hurt fighting instead of hiding. Sophie was quiet for a long moment. Mom says you're obsessed, that you can't let go of the past. Your mother's probably right, but some things are worth being obsessed about. Like what? Like self-respect, like not letting people walk all over you just because it's easier than fighting back. After I hung up, I realized that this conversation was probably the most honest one Sophie and I had ever had. For 15 years, I'd been the accommodating father, the one who smoothed over conflicts and avoided difficult topics. Tonight, I'd told her the truth about who I was and what I believed. It felt good. The Riverside Athletic Center was packed on event night. The charity competition was always popular, but this year the excitement was noticeably higher. News had spread about the personal tension between Rex and me. People came expecting intense drama, even if they wouldn't say so out loud. I arrived early and found Vic in the makeshift locker room behind the main arena. He was laying out my gear with the precision of a surgeon preparing for an operation. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Ready?" "Good. Remember what we talked about. Rex is going to try to end it early. He wants to look dominant, wants to put you down fast and make it look easy. Don't let him dictate the pace." I changed into my fight gear, wrapping my hands with the ritual precision that Vic had drilled into me over the years. The familiar routine was calming, focusing my mind on the task ahead. "Trent?" I turned to find Helena standing in the doorway of the locker room. She looked tired, older than her 43 years. The stress of the last month had carved new lines around her eyes. "You're not supposed to be here," I said. "Restraining order, remember?" "I know, but I needed to talk to you before—" She gestured toward the arena, where we could hear the crowd settling in for the evening's entertainment. "Before I embarrass your boyfriend in front of the whole town?" Helena's jaw tightened. "Before you do something you'll regret. The only thing I regret is not doing this 15 years ago. Trent, please. This has gone far enough. Rex's business is collapsing. My career is in shambles. Sophie's getting bullied at school because of all the publicity. When does it end?" I stood up, my hands wrapped and ready. "It ends tonight." Helena stepped closer, lowering her voice. "What if I told you there were things you didn't know? Things that might change how you feel about all this?" "Like what?" "Like the fact that Rex threatened me. Told me that if I didn't go along with his plan for that dinner, he'd make sure Sophie never got into a decent college. He had connections, influence. I was trying to protect our daughter." I stared at her for a long moment. Even now, even after everything that had happened, Helena was trying to manipulate me, trying to make herself the victim, trying to find an angle that would get her off the hook. "You know what, Helena? Even if that's true, and I don't believe it is, it doesn't matter. You still chose to humiliate me in public. You still chose to let me believe Sophie was my biological daughter for 15 years. You still chose to plan that dinner like it was some kind of game. You were protecting yourself, like always." I picked up my mouthguard and headed for the door. "Now get out of my locker room. I've got a fight to win." The arena was electric when I walked out for the main event. Rex was already in the ring, shadowboxing for the crowd and looking confident. He'd probably spent the last month convincing himself that this was going to be easy, that he was going to teach the blue-collar nobody a lesson about knowing his place. I climbed through the ropes and found my corner, where Vic was waiting with water and a towel. The referee called us to the center of the ring for instructions. "I want a good, clean fight," he said, looking back and forth between Rex and me. "Protect yourselves at all times, obey my commands, and remember that this is for charity." Rex leaned in close as we touched gloves. "Hope you're ready to get embarrassed, Trent, just like that night at dinner." I smiled and said nothing. Words were over. Now it was time for action. The bell rang, and Rex came out fast, just like Vic had predicted. He wanted to overwhelm me early, to show the crowd that he was the superior man. His first combination was crisp and aggressive, designed to back me against the ropes and set up a dramatic knockout. But I'd been training for this moment for 3 weeks, and Rex had been training for charity matches against guys who weren't trying to hurt him. When his right cross came toward my head, I slipped it easily and countered with a short left hook to his ribs. Rex's eyes widened in surprise. He'd expected me to cover up, to try to survive his early assault. Instead, I was fighting back, and fighting back hard. The first round was feeling out time, both of us trying to establish our rhythm. Rex had better technique, but I had better conditioning. By the end of the round, he was already breathing hard while I felt like I was just getting warmed up. "He's already tired," Vic said between rounds. "Keep the pressure on. Make him work." The second round was where I took control. Rex tried to establish his jab, to keep me at distance where his reach advantage would matter. But I kept slipping inside, working his body, making him carry my weight in the clinches. Every time he tried to create space, I closed it down. Halfway through the round, I caught him with a right hand to the solar plexus that doubled him over. The crowd gasped as Rex stumbled backward, his face pale with pain and surprise. "Come on, Rex," I said as we circled each other. "I thought you were tough. I thought you were the alpha male." Rex's face flushed with anger, and he charged forward with a wild haymaker that would have taken my head off if it had connected. But it didn't connect. I ducked under it and came up with an uppercut that snapped his head back and sent him sprawling across the ring. The referee started counting, but Rex managed to get back to his feet at 8. He was hurt, badly hurt, and everyone in the arena could see it. "Box!" the referee commanded, and I went back to work. The third round was academic. Rex was running on fumes and pride, while I was just hitting my stride. I picked my shots carefully, methodically breaking down his defense and his confidence. Every punch I landed was a statement. I am not the weak man you thought I was. I am not someone you can humiliate without consequences. With 30 seconds left in the fight, I caught Rex with a combination that sent him to the canvas for the second time. This time, he didn't get up. The referee counted to 10 while the crowd erupted in a mixture of cheers and shocked silence. I'd done more than win the fight. I'd dominated it. I'd taken everything Rex thought he knew about himself and shattered it in front of 500 people. As the referee raised my hand in victory, I looked out into the crowd and found Helena's face. She was sitting in the front row, her expression a mixture of fear and something that might have been respect. For the first time in 16 years, Helena was seeing me as I really was, not the accommodating husband, not the blue-collar nobody she'd settled for, but a man who was capable of violence when pushed too far. I climbed out of the ring and walked back toward the locker room, ignoring the reporters and well-wishers who tried to intercept me. I'd said everything I needed to say with my fists. In the locker room, Vic was grinning like a proud father. "That," he said, "was beautiful. You didn't just beat him, you destroyed him." "It's not over yet," I said, unwrapping my hands. "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone and showed him a text message I'd received that morning. It was from Tommy, and it contained information that was going to change everything. "Rex isn't Sophie's father," I said. Vic's eyes widened. "What?" "Tommy hacked the clinic's records. The real ones, not the fake consent forms Helena signed. Rex's sperm count is too low for natural conception. Has been for years, probably from steroid use back in high school." "Then who?" "According to the records, the sperm donor was anonymous. Clinic donor number 247. But Tommy cross-referenced the donor database with public records and found a match." I showed Vic the photo on my phone. A man in his 50s, with Sophie's eyes and Helena's stubborn chin. "Judge William Crane," I said. "Helena's father, Sophie's grandfather. And according to the clinic records, He's also her biological father. Vic stared at the photo for a long moment. Helena's been sleeping with her own father? Looks that way, and Rex has been paying child support for a kid that isn't even his. The pieces of Helena's deception were finally coming together. The elaborate lies, the fake consent forms, the dinner theater performance, all of it designed to hide the fact that Helena had been having an affair with her own father and had passed off their child as mine. "What are you going to do with this?" Vic asked. I smiled, and for the first time in weeks, it felt genuine. "I'm going to end this, once and for all." The final confrontation was going to be public, devastating, and absolutely perfect. Helena thought she'd been playing chess while I was playing checkers. She was about to learn that I'd been playing a completely different game. The Riverside Country Club's annual charity gala was the social event of the year. $500 a plate, black tie required, and a guest list that read like a who's who of the city's elite. Helena had been on the planning committee for 3 years running, using the event to network with potential clients and cement her position in the community's upper echelons. She'd also made one critical mistake. She'd forgotten to remove me from the guest list. I arrived fashionably late, wearing a tuxedo I'd rented from the same place I'd gotten my wedding outfit 16 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. I looked good. 3 weeks of intensive training had stripped away the soft edges that 16 years of marriage had added to my frame. I felt dangerous. The country club's ballroom was exactly what you'd expect: crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, and enough fake smiles to power a small city. Helena was holding court near the silent auction tables, resplendent in a black evening gown that probably cost more than I made in a month. She saw me the moment I walked in. I watched her face cycle through surprise, fear, and finally a kind of resigned determination. She knew why I was here. Rex was at the bar, his face still showing faint bruises from our encounter in the boxing ring 2 weeks earlier. He'd been keeping a low profile since then, probably on the advice of his lawyers. The Attorney General's investigation was heating up, and Rex was learning that being a local celebrity didn't make you immune to criminal prosecution. Judge Crane was at the head table, looking every inch the distinguished patriarch. At 72, he still cut an imposing figure, tall, silver-haired, with the kind of presence that commanded respect in courtrooms and country clubs alike. He was also, according to the DNA evidence Tommy had uncovered, the biological father of my daughter. I made my way through the crowd, accepting congratulations on my boxing victory and deflecting questions about my separation from Helena. Everyone wanted to know what was really going on, but they were too polite to ask directly. That was about to change. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC announced from the podium, "if you could please take your seats, we'll begin this evening's program." I found my assigned table, number 12, near the back of the room. Helena had probably hoped I wouldn't show up, but she'd been too careful about appearances to actually remove my name from the list. Divorced or not, I was still technically her husband, and the country club set valued propriety above all else. The program began with the usual speeches about community service and charitable giving. The youth center director talked about the programs they were funding. A local businessman discussed the importance of giving back. Helena herself gave a brief presentation about the legal aid clinic her firm sponsored. She was poised, articulate, and completely in control. The perfect image of a successful professional woman who dedicated her life to serving others. It was a masterful performance, and it was about to be her last. "Before we continue," I said, standing up from my table, "I'd like to add something to tonight's program." The room went quiet. Helena's face went pale. The MC looked confused, unsure whether to allow the interruption or call for security. "I'm Trent Ardell," I continued, projecting my voice to reach every corner of the ballroom. "Some of you may know me as Helena's husband, or rather, her soon-to-be ex-husband." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This wasn't the kind of drama people expected at a charity gala, but it was the kind they secretly craved. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank everyone who supported my family over the years, especially those of you who've helped keep our secrets. Helena was on her feet now, trying to signal the MC to cut me off, but I'd positioned myself strategically, and the microphone was on the other side of the room. You see, I recently learned some interesting things about my family, about my wife's relationship with her clients, about my daughter's true parentage, about the elaborate web of lies that's been holding our perfect life together. Rex was moving toward me now, his face flushed with anger. But Vic appeared beside him, placing a restraining hand on his arm. Vic had positioned himself perfectly, ready to intervene if Rex tried to stop me. "Helena," I called out, "would you like to tell everyone the truth? Or should I?" Helena's composure finally cracked. "Trent, please, not here. Not like this." "Why not here? This is where you wanted to destroy me, isn't it? In front of all your friends and colleagues? In front of everyone who matters in your world?" I pulled out my phone and connected it to the room's audiovisual system, a trick Tommy had taught me earlier that day. The country club's tech setup was surprisingly sophisticated, and Tommy had shown me exactly how to override their controls. "I'd like to share some documents with you," I said, as the first image appeared on the ballroom's projection screens. "This is a consent form from the Riverside Fertility Clinic signed by my wife 18 months ago." The crowd gasped as they read the form's contents. Helena's signature, clear as day, requesting artificial insemination using donor sperm. Not Rex's sperm, as she'd claimed at that disastrous dinner, but anonymous donor number 247. "Interesting, isn't it?" I continued, "especially when you cross-reference donor 247 with the clinic's records." The next slide showed a DNA comparison chart that Tommy had prepared. Clean, clinical, and absolutely damning. It turns out that donor 247 is a very distinguished member of our community, someone we all know and respect, someone who's been sitting at the head table tonight, watching his daughter lie about their relationship for the past 15 years. Judge Crane was on his feet now, his face the color of old paper. "This is preposterous. I won't stand for these accusations." "They're not accusations, Your Honor. They're facts. Documented, verified facts." I clicked to the next slide, which showed Judge Crane's photo alongside Sophie's school picture. The resemblance was unmistakable once you knew what to look for. The same eyes, the same chin, the same stubborn set to the mouth. "Helena," I said, turning to face her directly, "would you like to explain to everyone how your father became your daughter's father? Or should I?" The ballroom erupted in chaos. People were shouting, chairs were scraping against the floor, and camera phones were appearing as guests realized they were witnessing the scandal of the decade. Helena was crying now, her perfect composure completely shattered. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she sobbed. "It was just once, after Mom died. We were both grieving, and we made a mistake." "A mistake that lasted 15 years?" I asked. "We tried to stop. We tried to make it right. But then I got pregnant, and we didn't know what to do." Judge Crane was pushing through the crowd toward the exit, but reporters were already blocking his path. The story was out now, and there was no containing it. "So, you decided to pin it on me," I said. "Let me raise your father's child. Let me believe she was mine. Let me pay for everything while you two continued your sick relationship." "It wasn't like that," Helena protested. "Then what was it like? Explain it to me. Explain it to all of us." But Helena had no explanation that would make sense to a room full of horrified onlookers. She'd been caught in a web of lies so complex and disturbing that even her lawyer's training couldn't help her spin it. Rex, meanwhile, was staring at the projection screen in shock. "You mean Sophie isn't even mine?" he asked. "No, Rex. Sophie isn't yours. You've been paying child support for a kid who's the product of an incestuous relationship between Helena and her father. Congratulations. You're not a deadbeat dad. You're just a regular deadbeat." The crowd was thinning now as people fled the ballroom, desperate to escape the toxic atmosphere and start spreading the gossip. But enough remained to witness the final act of Helena's destruction. "There's one more thing," I said, clicking to the final slide. "Helena's been using her position at Whitman & Associates to cover up Judge Crane's involvement in several questionable legal decisions, cases where he ruled in favor of clients her firm was representing, despite obvious conflicts of interest." The slide showed a detailed timeline of cases, rulings, and payments that painted a picture of corruption stretching back years. Helena hadn't just been sleeping with her father, she'd been using their relationship to fix cases and enrich herself. "So there you have it," I said, disconnecting my phone from the projection system. "The truth about Helena Ardell, Judge William Crane, and the perfect family they've been hiding behind for 15 years. I walked toward the exit, ignoring the reporters shouting questions and the remaining guests staring in shock. At the door, I turned back for one final look at the wreckage I'd created. Helena was collapsed in a chair, surrounded by her law firm partners who were probably already calculating the damage to their reputation. Rex was at the bar, drinking heavily and muttering to himself. Judge Crane was nowhere to be seen, probably already on the phone with his own attorney. It was over. The lies, the deception, the years of being treated like a fool, all of it was finally over. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. I loosened my tie and walked toward my truck, feeling lighter than I had in years. My phone was buzzing with calls and texts, but I ignored them all. There would be time for interviews and explanations later. Right now, I just wanted to drive. I was halfway to my truck when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to find Sophie running across the parking lot, still in her formal dress from the gala. "Dad, wait!" I stopped and waited for her to catch up. She was crying, her makeup streaked and her hair disheveled. "Is it true?" she asked. "About Mom and Grandpa?" "Yes," I said simply. "It's true." Sophie stared at me for a long moment, processing the implications. "So you're not my real father?" "Biologically? No. But I'm the one who raised you. I'm the one who taught you to ride a bike and helped you with your homework and worried about you every day for 15 years. That makes me your real father in every way that matters. But you're leaving. I left your mother. I didn't leave you." Sophie wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "What happens now? Now you get to decide what kind of person you want to be. Whether you want to be like your mother and grandfather, building your life on lies and manipulation, or whether you want to be better than that. What if I don't know how? Then you learn, and you make mistakes, and you try again." I reached out and touched her shoulder gently. "But you do it honestly, Sophie. Whatever else happens, you do it honestly." Sophie nodded, still crying, but with a kind of determination in her eyes that I'd never seen before. "I love you, Dad," she said. "I love you too, kiddo. That's never going to change." I got in my truck and drove away from the country club, leaving behind the wreckage of my old life and the people who'd tried to destroy me. In my rearview mirror, I could see the lights of the ballroom where Helena's world was collapsing in real time. It had taken me 16 years to understand that sometimes the only way to win is to be willing to lose everything. Tonight, I'd lost a wife, a daughter, and a life that had never really been mine anyway. But I'd won something more important: my self-respect. The road ahead was dark and uncertain, but it was mine to travel. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough.